Yeah. I feel when I work nights, I work 1 week on, 3 weeks off, and each week seemed to have a theme. It's like theme week off, and this week it was the theme week off. I have no clue what's going on, and these are dying, and I'm not really sure what to do. And I think it's really important that we share these cases because, according to the textbooks, when a patient comes in, we take the history, we take a full history, get all the details, we do everything we can to diagnose, we do all the tests, we do imaging, and then we have an idea of different diagnoses it can be. We do some more tests, and then we do like a treatment, and the animal either becomes better or not because we can't help it. However, there are so many cases that just don't make sense. Like you just don't know what's going on and you're doing everything you can and it just doesn't make sense. And you actually never get to a full diagnosis. And I think it's really important we talk about this because I feel really stupid and useless when I can't get to a diagnosis and the animal is just deteriorating in front of me and I'm running around and I'm trying to ask colleagues, like sending pictures of, screenshots of the blood test and images and trying to say, do you see something? What am I missing? And I tend to doubt myself. So I want to share with you 2 cases I had this week where this happened. Theme of, I feel useless. I'm not good enough vet. And just to take you through the process I go through now, so I don't end up feeling super bad and coming off my shits, reeling, thinking I should have done something else or what is wrong with me, right? So the first dog I had in was a 12-year-old Labrador that had been absolutely fine, and out of nowhere, she just collapsed. And the first thing I think when I have one of these is hemangiosarcoma that's bleeding onto the abdomen from the spleen or sometimes the liver, mainly the spleen, because that's just how they present. But this dog was not pale, her pulse was sort of fine, and she was just incredibly painful. So I did x-rays, I did scan, I did an epoch, and there was just nothing specific. Like there was just fat everywhere because this is a Labrador. Although she was in good shape, we know they have a lot of abdominal fat, right? And it was just shining. I couldn't define anything. I was like, I think this is the spleen, and it does seem to kind of like not end normally the capsule. I think there's a mass in the spleen, but I can't see any free fluid. And the owner had already lost 2 large breed dogs to abdominal tumors. So he had an idea it was badness, and he had an idea that the dog was probably on his way out. It's a 12-year-old Labrador, but also she had otherwise been healthy, had not had any weight loss. And I was like, what if it's just something really stupid, like an intestinal torsion or some foreign body they're not aware of? Am I missing? So I managed to keep her alive and keep her stable until, and pain-free, obviously, methadone, hello friend, until the day vets came in. And I handed over and I was like, this owner, the insured, can we do a CT scan or an X-lab? What do you think? So they ended up doing a CT scan, and she actually had 2 masses in the spleen, and she had like a mini perforation somewhere in the small intestine that was releasing small amounts of fluid and bubbles of gas into the abdomen, which made the image really weird, right? And very difficult for me to diagnose, since you all know, if you follow me for a while, I'm not very confident with my ultrasounds. But my brain was definitely thinking, this dog is suffering. I kind of want these owners to make a decision so we can end her suffering, but I also get that it's very hard to do this just from a gut feeling. If you can afford the tests and keep doing tests until you get a full diagnosis, it's just kind of this nice bow for the owners to have to tie the case and say, okay, there's nothing more we can do. We have the full diagnosis. It can't be helped. Let's help her over the rainbow bridge. And I was not with, we don't have enough team members at night to do a CT scan. And, with the 2 of me and 1 nurse, specifically on this night, like that's just not, we just can't do that. And I don't want to break this CT machine. I do have a incredible talent for breaking very expensive machinery. So I do not touch that machine. That's just no, that's a no for me. So I was thinking, my brain was like, oh my God, if somebody more confident doing ultrasounds did it, they might be able to get to a diagnosis before I could and make sure the animal doesn't suffer anymore. But it wasn't actually true, because both day vets did ultrasounds, and they found different things, like a tiny amount of fluids, and they thought they saw 2 masses on the spleen as well, but they weren't bleeding out. So would it then be worth going in and removing the spleen? So it was not until CT scan came back and there was a lot of badness that they decided, and the dog was deteriorating, that they could decide to put the dog to sleep. So it's just a case of, it just shows that you can't sometimes rush a diagnosis, even when the animal is deteriorating and you kind of have an idea of this should be easy to diagnose. This is not like some ongoing chronic weird disease, right? There is something here making this dog becoming so incredibly painful and collapse like in minutes. It has to be diagnosticable. But sometimes it just isn't. Look, I got 20 years of experience. I've worked in a million of different places in like 3 different countries, and there's still things I just can't diagnose, and it can be frustrating. But I am getting incredibly good at, obviously through all the coaching I've got over the years as well, to reel the brain in when it comes with this like yap, yap, yap in the back of, you're just not good enough. If somebody else had been on it, then they would have been diagnosed easier. You know, you're wasting the owner's time. You're wasting the dog's time. You know, what are you doing? And coming back to, look, I'm the vet the dog has got right now, and I have the ability to at least diagnose whatever I can so I can support her until we can get to a full diagnosis. So I knew, obviously, abdominal, something not great. Let's put on fluids. Let's give her methadone. Let's give her meropetam. Make sure she's not suffering. And then let's make sure she's stable as well for a full GA in order to do either an X-lab or do a CT scan. And coming back to always say, look, this is what we've got right now. This is how far I can get in my diagnosis. And it is completely normal as well for a normal GP vet, by, sole charge of one nurse, to not being able to diagnose something within 2 hours, right? This dog came in, I think, 6:15 in the morning, and we were handing over 7:30. So in less than 2 hours, there was just I could not get to a diagnosis. And I didn't take this case to me when I went to sleep, because I was like, I've done everything I could, literally. And I know she's not painful. And I know the Davids are going to take over and they're going to do the next step. So that was the first case. The second case is completely like the other end of a spectrum. This was a 1-year-old middle-sized dog that had been to the beach, and the Davids admitted it because it had apparently eaten a lot of sand or drunk salt water. They weren't quite sure what exactly it had done, but now she was like breathing weird, and she was breathing weird, what else? And then muscle tremors she had as well. So they were like, huh? Like, what's happening with this dog? So they did full imaging, ran bloods, and yes, she had eaten sand, but the sand they could see was moving through the abdomen. It was some of it was in colon already, and the potassium was a bit low, 2.9. So they decided to, okay, let's put on potassium. Let's give her some pain relief in case this sand is, bothering her, giving her abdominal pain, and maybe that's why she's breathing like this. She came in with a respiratory rate of 200. That is very high for a dog that's not panting. And by the time I took over, and she'd had some analgesia, and she was kind of like, they were trying to control the potassium, her respiratory was still 80, which had me worried. So I did my consultations and stuff. And by the time I got to her, it was 2 hours into my shift. And my nurse was like, I am really worried about this dog. She's only 1 and she looks like she's 13 and about to pop the clocks. So we re-examined her, and there was not a lot of changes, but you just get you could just see the chi, the will of life to leave this animal. And the respiratory rate was anything between 80 and 100. And I'm like, why is this so high when she's already had analgesia? So I did chest x-rays. I ran bloods again. I did a scan to make sure there's no free fluid. We measured the oxygen levels, which were fine. We did blood pressure. I don't know. I just nothing else more I could think about. I was messaging one of my colleagues who's really good at imaging and said, can you see something on this chest x-ray I'm missing? Like, what is wrong with this dog? And we just could not get to a cause, like why was she breathing so weird, and why did she look like she wanted to die? And so I phoned the owners thinking, I'm just going to refer this animal because she's 1 year old. I don't want her to die on my shift just because we don't know what's going on with her. And then the owners, of course, don't pick up. I, of course, leave a message because our calls are recorded, and I want it to be on record that I tried to reach the owner, and I told her on the message, your dog is poorly. I think you should maybe call us back so we can discuss it and see what you want to do. They never phoned back. So right? So now I'm tied by an estimate, and that was now over because I'd done more tests. But I was like, I'm not, we need to get this dog alive until the morning. So we upped her fluids, we gave her more pain relief, we tried to cool her down actively to see if there was because she was feeling hot. And we managed to get her rest rate down to about 60, which was a great improvement. And she also was a bit more relaxed. But I never got to a full diagnosis. I still to this, like, I think hopefully my colleagues will text me. I'll text them and see what was wrong with the dog. Like, why was she so weird? She also had some ongoing conditions where she was on prednisolone, and I'm not quite sure. There was something else going on with her. But my brain wanted to tell me in the morning, like, oh my God, it's just a miracle. This dog is alive. It really survived down to pure luck. And I was like, no, brain. She did not survive down to pure luck. She survived because we gave her support and we made sure that we met all her vital needs. So we were watching her oxygen levels, we were watching her pain, we were making sure her temperature stayed stable, we were giving fluids and electrolytes according to what was going on in her body. And my brain wanted to completely deny all that, just throw it in the trash, because I hadn't reached a full diagnosis. So can you see the trap here for vets? I guess healthcare providers in general. Like, according to the test books, we have a full history, we get all the tests, we have a diagnosis, and then we treat. And in the meantime, we stabilize if they're very ill. But sometimes all of these steps just don't get fulfilled. We just can't reach a diagnosis. Some cases just don't make sense. And you have to work with what you've got in the moment. And for me, there's obviously the top priority is don't die. But up there, same, I wouldn't say it's any less, is don't suffer. So I will throw analgesia, whatever I need. So we threw opioids, we used paracetamol, we used maropitant to try and help this dog so it wasn't painful. And if needed, we would have done some sort of drip to make sure she wasn't painful. And that is basically, I think, the two top priorities: don't die and don't suffer, right? And if you can do that and carry the dog through long enough that then more tests can be done, that you can then reach the owner and get consent to do more tests or refer if needed, then you've done a good job. I think it's very important that we don't over focus on the missing step. For example, I didn't really feel I had a lot of history. Maybe I would have liked to ask more questions because the day vets took over, and when they took the dog in, it looked like one thing, like this sand was the main issue with the dog, so they kind of focused on that. But then as the symptoms deteriorated, I would have liked to have more history and more like, but what medication is she on, and when did she last have the preds, and what exactly is going on? And I couldn't because the owners didn't pick up the phone, so I didn't have a full history. We had all the tests, but I still didn't have a full diagnosis. I still didn't know why exactly is this dog so poorly and why is she trying to die on me for no obvious reason. Maybe there's some internal medicine nerds out there that can go back at me, well, this is a clear case of some saltwater ingestion of whatever. But I don't know. I could not get to a diagnosis. And again, with 20 years of experience working in a lot of different places, I'm not stupid and I have a lot of experience and I will put my heart and soul into it. But sometimes I just don't get to a diagnosis. And luckily, quote unquote, I could support these two cases until the next day when they could then contact the owner who claimed I didn't leave a message. Luckily, we have recordings. So, and then they could kind of like then discuss whether they wanted to refer the case or not. I guess I'll find out at some point if somebody tells me, or when I go back on shift, I will see what happened to this dog and try and learn from the case. And that is my mentality going forward. And I think it's important for you, if you beat yourself up over these cases, to realize, what mentality have you got? Do you beat yourself up? Do you over focus on all the things you weren't able to finish or carry out? If the owners didn't have enough money to carry out more tests, do you then beat yourself up thinking, I should have diagnosed with whatever money I had to my within my reach to do the test? Do you look back and say, oh, I should have done this instead, I should have done this? Or do you over focus on maybe another colleague that is good at something that if they had been in, you would have the dog or the cat or whatever animal would have been better off because they were in there. Like, I think it's really important that, no, I know it's really important that you need to know what your brain is doing. You need to know what stories and what narrative your brain is telling you about these cases, because if not, then you go home and days after you try, you're sitting there eating and suddenly it pops in, could it have been this, why didn't I diagnose that? Or you're trying to fall asleep and your brain is like, hello, do you remember this? Like, you didn't diagnose, and they probably all think you're really stupid, and the owner's probably upset because you didn't get to a diagnosis, and you forget, like my brain was trying to make me forget about, the hours I put into actually getting so far in the diagnosis that if this dog was referred, they would have all this history of like your blood pressure, the SpO2, what were the electrolytes doing, what was the red blood cells doing, lymphogram, the repeated X-ray where we could see the sun moving through. So they would have so much basis to go from to evaluate any changes, and that would give them so much help to diagnose, right? It's like we completely undervalue, my brain tends to anyway, and I'm sure a lot of your brains do as well. We completely undervalue everything we've done just because we don't have the full diagnosis, full treatment, and now a healthy dog walking out the door, right? Sometimes we just a little step, a little brick in the wall in the animal's sick journey, and don't overestimate what you can do. Like, we are not God, right? We don't have to have, from the animal comes in to leaves out, we don't have to have the whole case. Sometimes we just a little part of it. We are a few hours of this animal's journey, or we are one of the visits. When it comes in, we discover a little bit more. We take some bloods, another vet takes over, and they discover a bit more. So really watch when your brain tries to push down everything you've done and just say, oh, whatever went well was down to luck, and whatever it didn't go so well is because you're useless. Like, really learn to focus on everything you have done to support the animal, all the diagnostic tests you have taken, which might help, for the next one in the line. And come back to that and reel your brain in, watch the narrative, watch the negative thoughts coming in, catch them, correct them. And this is not, as I said before, it's just not like think positively. No, it's literally looking at the facts. How many things did you do? Did you call someone to ask for advice? Did you try to get hold of the owners? Were you like within a tight budget and you did so much you could within the budget, but it just wasn't enough to get there? Really, look, you need to value yourself. Basically, you need to value everything you've done, and you need to really get hold of that, and don't let go of it just because your brain is obsessed, like filling out all the paragraphs in the textbook. I hope this was helpful for next time you have one of these cases, especially if you have one that ends up in a complaint, so you can come back to, yeah, but I did all this, and of course I'm not God, I can't do everything from A to Z in one night or a few hours. And I hope you will learn to watch the narrative of what your brain is doing. And if you need any help with this, remember that I'm still available for one-on-one coaching. You can find the link in the show notes to have a call with me. It is completely free, and it's 50 minutes where we sit and go through. If you want, we can just go through one case you have that is eating your heart out and, messing with your sleep, and we can just go through it, and I can show you, look, this is where you're beating yourself up. These are the facts. Let's go through them. Let's look at what your brain is telling you that might not be true. And I will challenge each and one of the negative thoughts you're telling yourself, and I will show you how most of them are not true. And then if you love the call and you want more of that, you can sign up for my coaching program, but you don't have to. You can literally just try like 50 minutes of what it's like to have your brain challenged if you're not able to. Because listen, if you have been in this career for a while and you're on fight and flight, you don't even know you are. Like, I didn't know I was like having anxiety attacks, and I was like, oh, I'm just working too many hours, not knowing what my brain was doing to me. You might not even be aware of it, but if you're lacking sleep, you're not having all your needs fulfilled, like my prior podcast, if you have listened to that, then it's going to be very difficult to challenge your brain by yourself. I struggled a lot. Now I do it on the go, but it's taken me 4 years of work on myself. So don't think there's anything wrong with you just because you can't do it and you can't challenge your brain by yourself. It is very hard to do when you're in it. It's like you can't read the label when you're inside the bottle. All right, so feel free, reach out, book that free call with me, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Take care. Bye.